ninja legend. When a long sword is on top of a short sword and covered with a red cloth, it means a challenge. No one can turn down the challenge. You're going to accept the challenge? You aren't, did you? Aren't you?
Hello, I'm Sabrina, aka Bria, aka the artist of the popular transgender-themed webcomic Life of Bria, and now I've got my very own radio show. This is episode number 13 of my show Live with Bria, and it's not going out live this time. We're pre-recording at a more convenient time, which is completely acceptable, and don't judge me for it. And it will also actually be the last one of the year. Next Sunday is Christmas, and Sunday after that is going to be New Year's. So yeah, I'm not doing shows on those days. No one's going to listen. I'm probably going to be moping. I don't know. Don't worry about it. We all need a break. I need a 2-week break. You probably don't want to hear 2 more weeks of this during Christmas time. I'll be back in the new year, and we can just have to consider this to be our shocking finale to season 1. And what a way to go out. For today, I have the pleasure of joining with the Toronto-based webcomic artist, Robot Hugs. Thanks so much for joining me, Robot.
Thanks for having me.
So your comics are pretty well established. You've been featured on popular sites like Everyday Feminism. And, as you're getting out there in the art world, you've got a big fan base. And I'm certain they all want to know the answer to what I'm dying to ask you. What's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, geez. You know what? I don't know. Well, okay, of course it's a stegosaurus. Let's just get that out of the way. But I've been thinking about dinosaurs a lot recently because I think I'm in this space where I'm trying to create things instead of doing my real work.
Aren't we all?
And you can do this awesome paper folding, gluing thing called Pepakura, and I found this set of dinosaurs you can do, and I'm super into it. And I want to put them as busts up on my wall, and I'm researching dinosaurs, and I'm downloading 3D modeling software and trying to unfold them and create new patterns and stuff like that. And all of this is not at all what I'm supposed to be doing with my free time.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
That's my thing right now. I'm obsessed with them slightly, and it's a complete distraction from everything else that I should be doing.
Are they 2-dimensional when they're created, or 3-dimensional?
Oh no, they're 3D models made out of paper and craft and glue,
That's amazing.
And they're incredible. And I've made one before, and I loved it. It's just recently I completed a different project, and I'm in massive project phase instead of looking at my long-term things, which is very appropriate for the end of the year.
Yeah,
by the way,
that's probably the way to do it. You go out with just kind of fun things and not worrying about the future till after New Year's. I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to accomplish things. I want to finish stuff for once.
It feels so good to finish a project, even if it's not important or not making you money or whatever. It's just for your soul, you have to finish these things.
I think that's true. And it's really weird to talk about the money side of it too, because coming back to the comic, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've gone into a space where I'm able to sort of put an ad or two up and sell some posters and stuff like that. And I think that's really good, because I believe that we should be compensated for activism work, but also kind of changes the way you start thinking about the work that you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I think that's a little hard.
You want to do really authentic, important work, but then you start worrying about, especially, I guess in my case, you don't have a Patreon, last I saw on your site. You don't want to have it. You're satisfied. It's actually rare. Most artists, they are no, I want art to be my thing, but you've got a fulfilling life doing other stuff, right?
I have a well-paying job outside of Robot Hugs, and my position is people ask me to put Patreons up, and my friends do as well. And my position is I don't have time for that. Wait, can I swear in this? Are we swearing?
Yeah, I fucking swear all the time. Don't worry.
Oh God, thank God. Oh man, I've been on podcasts where I can't, and it's rough. Anyways, so I don't have time for that for sure. But secondly, I don't need the money, and there are so many incredible artists out there who could really use your dollar a month, and you should go pay them. Because I'm fine. I got like a house and cats and a job, and this is just like me messing around in my free time.
Wow, that's noble.
But at the same time, like, I do have this thing where I'd like to break even. Like, I'd like to like not run at $100 or $2,000 or whatever lost a year, which is the costs of doing comic work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
not
like,
to mention time lost. I mean,
oh no, I don't factor in my time at all. My God,
well, it's fine,
time...
but I try to feel that way. If I do illustration work, it's like, okay, I'm not making a great hourly wage here, but this is also recreational somewhat because I like drawing. Still totally deserve to get paid, but I'm not going to grumble that I'm not making top dollar on the hour because I love it.
Yeah,
I mean,
because you're not going to get paid, like, unless you've really, really moved into a whole other sphere. It's really, really hard to make, like, even minimum wage.
Oh, yeah.
Doing any sort of creative work. So yeah, that's been on my mind, actually, because I'm obviously doing my year-end finances and looking at what I gained and what I lost, and then what I gained in friendships, which is the other, tax-deductible metric we have
if only.
in Canada.
No, but that's a huge part, the community that you've gained, that I've gained since I've started just being involved with trans activism more. It's amazing. I never would have guessed that it would improve my life so much.
Yeah, and gives you kind of a direction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you feel like the work you do matters. Yeah,
I think we've seen in the last few weeks a lot of people saying, like, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I be doing that matters? And there's a lot of things, there's putting your money in right places and calling representatives and all this stuff. And it's nice to also just have a space, right, where you can assert identity and put forward works that you think further a particular cause or position. And that even if, like, nobody reads that, it's still, like, I think there's power in asserting creative space.
Absolutely.
Even if you're the only person in that space.
And that's what's so interesting. We're already getting on something semi-heavy, is when people talk about free speech and safe spaces, and they come on to, I don't know if it happens on your page, but they come on my page and think they can treat everybody like garbage and tell them they should kill themselves and other things. And they get mad when you tell them not to do that or you kick them out. And it's like, this is my space. You go say your thing in your space, It's kind of outrageous, this idea that, okay, yeah, free speech, but nobody's stopping you just because we stop you here in our spot.
Yeah, and, the term free speech is badly used pretty much everywhere. Yeah. It doesn't mean you can say anything and no one can tell you not to say it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, so I get asked about this a lot, and actually, despite the kind of work I do, the correspondences I get are very positive, like almost universally positive. There was a really bad week with Reddit once, like 5 years ago, and that week messed me up. Jeez, Reddit, what the hell?
Yeah.
And at that point, I shut down all comments on my site. You can't comment on robothugs.com. I also made it so that somebody else briefly screens my emails before they get to me. So I don't have to open emails and get, like, confronted with...
Yes.
And you can comment on my Facebook page, but it is a moderated space. And it's not that you can't disagree with people on my Facebook page. It's just you can't be shitty. You just can't be shitty there. I don't...
It gets to be so tough. Like, because I have to moderate everything myself right now. And there'll be somebody, they post, like, a little, like, sort of concern troll remark. And it's somewhat innocuous. And you're like, okay, I'll let it slide. And it turns out it was just thinly veiled misogyny or bigotry of any sort. And they let loose. The typical, I don't want to sound like a bigot, but, and then, yeah, they sound like a bigot.
Well, I think the hardest thing for me in community management is it's easy to get rid of, like, the crazy, shitty stuff, right? Like, it's easy for the guy that comes on, he's like, burkas are oppression, to be like, all right, I don't have time for that. Like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's harder with these people that are either concern trolling or like trying to engage from a place of real ignorance in a way that's not great. And like most of the time, I just want to ignore them. Like, okay, like you think that mental health drugs are evil? Like, great, cool,
Yeah.
fine. And what stresses me out is the community management part of that, because then the people who follow me engage, and there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of challenging feelings and
Well, again, you want it to be a safe space again, right? Like, I always draw the line when they start attacking somebody, you know? Like, okay, now you're out for sure. This can't go any further because you are crossing a line here. I want people to be happy reading my comics, right?
yeah, I think for me it's personal attacks are never gonna fly. For me, it's just like I don't really want to be babysitting like 101 debates all the time.
Oh, you say the same term. I always say it's not my job to babysit you.
Yeah,
That's what it
and,
is.
and
Like,
fair. And to be honest, again, my Facebook page, I have a social media manager who like, again, this is work that I've like put on somebody
delegated.
else as I
Yeah.
find it so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
So like I visit there and I engage on there, and if you see me on Facebook, that's me. But like I tend not to sort of really get into the details of it until my manager's like, okay, there's a thing going on. Do you want me to handle this differently? Do you want to post something? Do you want to like somehow, or should we be blocking somebody? So in this respect, I'm incredibly lucky because I have this like great buffer. I cannot imagine doing this work as a part-time job for free and having to just like manage the social aspect of it as well.
Yeah. It's
Is it,
all
like,
overwhelming. But I mean, getting away from that, we kind of got way too heavy way faster than I hoped to.
oh no, I promised you. Okay.
No, I
okay.
promised you. I don't want to make this thing stressful too. Let's talk about, like, because I always ask that dinosaur question because I kind of want to know what sort of person my guest is and what they like. So now I'm kind of interested,
okay.
like what artists do you like? What inspires you?
Oh, good question. Actually, so here's a good thing I've been trying to do in terms of my activism is 2 years ago someone in an interview asked me that, and I was like, oh, you know, like there's lots of them, and there's like the person that does like Nimona, and then there's like the person that does this, and all I could remember were like the names of the comics.
Not
So
the
I've been
person.
trying really, really hard recently to sort of be like trying to amplify the voices I've been listening to and reading. But I am definitely right now into trying to support some of the local indie comics. So I'm obviously subscribed to Bitch Planet and Lumberjanes. I'm trying to get Hellcat. I love Squirrel Girl, even though I know that's crazy mainstream, but I think
You're allowed.
I'm allowed. Lately, I've been trying to gather books on like graphic novels on like queer history and trans history. So things like No Straight Lines. I'm looking over at my bookcase as we talk. You know, I've got the Beyond anthology has been really incredible. Obviously, Smut Peddler's up there. So yeah, any person who's kind of coming at comics from a non-traditional background, I'm really into.
I guess that comes through in your work. I mean, you started your comic in 2009, and I'm kind of interested what got you started doing that in the first place.
Well, I started doing it by accident, and really it's only in like the last few years, well, 5 or 6 years, that I've been actually trying to engage with a community of comics rather than just making my own. But I started because I was going through a massive mental health crisis, and I was in undergraduate university, which is like the worst combination of things. There are certainly worse ones, but like, you know, I'm trying to not waste the tens and tens of thousands of dollars I've spent on this education. At the same time, I can't go to school, and I kind of hate myself, and I definitely want a lot of unhealthy things. So I started drawing these little Postit Notes of dumb animals and stuff. and I stayed in. We were in this little house with my housemates, and they went away for the summer, and they came back, and like the house was like covered in Postit notes, and I think it looked really scary. Like I don't think it looked healthy.
Yeah, it was
What
almost
had
like a
happened?
beautiful mind moment or something where you
Like
realize
I
they've
was
been
a
working
shut
in
in with
secret.
like a whole stack of Postit notes. That was how that summer went for me. And then I gathered them all, and then someone was like, you should put these online." And so I started doing that, and it kind of really helped with the mental health thing because it gave me a focus. Right, I could stay home and draw, or I could go out and draw, and then it didn't mean that it was like pointless drawing. Like I had like a place where I could just be like, and so even if I wasn't getting great marks, at least I was like building something smaller and much more directed.
Yeah.
But if you go back into that work, you'll see that it's like completely aimless. It's just non sequiturs and puns and bad jokes and stuff. And then as my mental health improves, you start to see me start digging in on rougher stuff until we get to like now.
I enjoy those early ones though. They have this such like a Gary Larson vibe actually to them because there's so much animal stuff and weird, quirky one-liner humor and
Yeah, I
single
kind of
panel.
miss it sometimes.
Sorry?
Like, I kind of miss it sometimes.
Yeah, there's something to that simplicity of the one panel comic. And you no pressure on you to make some big statement. You're just being fun. And
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge I have right now is I just like lost my ability to be concise. Now I just do these like massive long form comics. And I so bad it would be like a more talented writer and artist could definitely do this in like 10 panels. And this is 30. So that's like my goal is improving my like tightness of message.
I do find when I'm making comics, I can always cut out at least a panel or two. But there is something to be said for long comics. You get to say more, you know?
I know it's leaving things out. It's more that like these comics tend to be the ones I do for Everyday Feminism. I'm a contributor there. They're incredible. One of the really nice things is because they have publishing standards and editors. I can take risks and do like comics about really challenging issues, and I know that there's going to be someone smart and capable that will read it over and be like, "Ooh, you need to think about this part a little harder," or "You have a blind spot here. Maybe you should read up on something." This gives me a lot of freedom because I don't have to worry about tackling topics that are too big for one person. But that because there's so much nuance in these, you know, if you don't say a thing, it's hard to. The community really doesn't like blind spots.
No, very, very unforgiving. Which I mean, deservedly so in some degrees. Like we're so used to hearing people just say bullshit or just leave out key things. Like you're talking about misogyny or something, you just leave out trans misogyny or whatever. And so we're always trying to push for something better. And when there's somebody you respect who then messes up, it's kind of like, hey, don't mess up, person I hold to a high standard.
You know? And I'm cool with that. Like, I really want to. I can't be everything to anyone. I mean, like.
Oh, you're always going to piss somebody off.
Right? But yeah, you can't put forth everything on every issue, but at the same time, if you're always going to get everything, you're never ever going to get any, like, the small details of things. So part of my goals, again, end of the year, I'm thinking about like focusing my messages a lot better, but also picking more advanced topics to maybe speak on, because doing just like
more advanced
one, you never get into any nuance. You never get into like of the really interesting like intersectional dirt of activism.
Now I noticed a lot of your it's especially looking at the early stuff versus later stuff. It's actually split a fair bit on whether or not you're dealing with serious discussions of important issues or just having fun. And which are you more interested in? Would you say? Do you like the fun stuff or do you prefer heavy stuff?
I like them both. I feel like I'm doing something useful when I do like heavy or whatever we want to call it, like productive work. at the same time, like doing that every week will burn you out like nothing else.
Oh,
and like I said, I have a job and like relationships and stuff. So at the same time, like I think that a comic that's just like always like, here's a problem in the world, or here's like, activism, or here's mental health. I think for me as a creator, that's just a lot of emotional labor.
Mm.
Also, I think cats are really funny,
Mm-hmm.
and the world needs that.
I think a lot of your best comics, though, they are this perfect balance. Like, I think the one that struck me right away when I saw it was the Miss Ant Tree one.
Ah, Miss Entry.
Yeah, because it was like, you perfectly nail the way, the hashtag not all men or whatever is. But then it's in the silly ant comic. And it's a great balance. Lighthearted, but serious. And I think that's what cartooning is.
They're hard to do. And it's a little, I think there's a real difficulty in doing like stuff that speaks to social issues or activism things. Like, Misandry was around misandry, and also like redirecting conversations about to be about men, that kind of stuff. And it's hard to be glib about those and be kind at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like doing them, but finding like the perfect tone of like, here's a ridiculous thing and here's me making fun of it, but like I'm not trying to minimize it, and I'm not trying to like shit on anyone.
This is a hard balance for sure. It's like I said, you're always going to piss somebody off. And if you go too far in either direction, it's really easy to hurt somebody's feelings with a discussion. And the question is, was the discussion more important than those feelings? I guess. Like,
Yes.
not too concerned about hurting a misandrist or a misogynist feelings, or like talking about this issue is important enough that if you're on, say, the misogyny side of it, your feelings don't matter as much as revealing the problems with what you're doing, But
Yeah.
But yeah,
balance is certainly part of it. And I do have like a really good group of people in my life who I can like write some stuff down and be like, hey, is this too much? Is this too far? Am I just being mean? Because I don't want to be mean. I want to be angry, because I am often,
mm-hmm.
And I want to be frustrated, because I am often. But I don't like being mean. Not that I think that like being angry and being mean is an unnatural or wrong reaction. It's just not something I feel represents the robot hugs persona.
Okay, you got hugs in your name. You got to have a certain degree of friendliness or compassion, right?
I think that's true. However, I do not like being touched, and that's caused miscommunications, by the way.
I could believe it, yeah.
I actually have a button that says, don't hug me, please.
Where did it come from then? I realized I didn't even think to ask before. Where did the name Robot Hugs come from?
It came because in way long ago, maybe like 15 years ago, I guess I had a pretty flat affect. I didn't emote very much. Maybe I don't now either. Who knows? And a friend was really upset, and I was like, okay, do you want a hug, I guess? And he was like, no, your hugs are robotic and cold. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good brand name, actually. Okay, I can work with that. Now, I've been since told that my hugs are adequate, at least. So
high praise.
Maybe I've reformed. But yeah, I kind of like that idea of like, I don't know. There's just something about like that sort of attempt at emotional connection when you're someone that doesn't do that very well.
I totally get that in your comics. So much of what you do is like about like expectations on us and like anxiety around social stuff and like all these weird pressures that are put on people in the name of normalcy.
I think that's a good summation of a theme. Is like pick apart what normal is,
mm-hmm.
and then where that hurts people.
Yes, that's the key thing. Because I mean, it's just normal. It's just common sense. It's like, well, for you, but for other people, this is a problem, and it's a problem that everyone just expects them to be this way. Like with straightness or whatever, all these different norms. I'm interested now, though. Did it come about just sort of organically that you started exploring issues? Like you said, at some point in your comics, you kind of started doing that. Was that a decision you made, or it just sort of happened?
I think, I mean, I've been thinking a lot of emotional labor, which I think is a term generally our audiences know
Mm-hmm.
around that free sort of mental and emotional energy into doing work. And I think where you see that coming into my work is because I was just like, at the beginning of my work, if you could just think of me as like a glass that was full like right up to the brim, where you could like see the bubble of water just like, and if you jostled that glass, oh geez, like that was just
Oh.
gonna go everywhere. And so I was doing very easy stuff because like I really didn't need jostling. And as I've started taking medication and had psychiatric care, and done some other things in my life that have made me more maybe resilient, or at least given me some more space, I've been able to lower the amount of water. The thing about going through bad mental health spaces is it kind of makes addressing identity issues very difficult because it's all intersectional, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
part of that full glass was like, living in a generally homophobic community. So like addressing queerness then would have been like a real jostling of that glass because like that was just going to be intersecting and such a social hurdle and such a internal hurdle. So it was best not to even touch that stuff back
Mm-hmm.
then. So, my glass of mental health issues has been going down, and given that space, I have more mental space and more physical space, as well as living in a very supportive environment to sort of really turn towards other issues. And so you can kind of see that I start getting more frustrated around general sexism and patriarchy stuff, and I start getting really frustrated at people who are really prescriptive about mental health treatments, and then we get into trans issues and intersectional issues, and you can just sort of see as my life gets better, I'm able to be like more complicatedly angry about things.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that really speaks to privilege and activism. Like we can't expect people who are having struggles in different parts of their life, mental health struggles or homelessness or poverty or these things, to be taking on this like massive amount of work because their glasses are so full already.
Mm-hmm. Or also,
I'm lucky that I have the space and the time, you know, so in some cases the education, a supportive job and partners and friends that lets me like really get my hands dirty, because otherwise I'd just be thinking about how I was going to afford dinner, because I remember that.
yes, that's not a fun feeling. And it's so hard. It reminds me of your comic that was talking about, I think, like sort of, allies wanting always for trans queer people or even women to explain to them what's going on with their conversation, like explaining to them what trans means or cis means or whatever. And it's like this burden you're constantly putting on us because you didn't do the homework, and
Yeah,
it's like this burden put on people who are already strained with their different things going on. Now they have to, it's their job to babysit all of society and explain to them how not to hurt them.
yeah,
And I mean, I get it for like allies. It's hard to know everything, but make an effort. Don't just, you know, oh, you there?
yeah. I'm
I'm
here.
so
I'm listening.
paranoid about it freezing. You're allowed to rest, but
What I'm doing. Yeah, that like hand holding is definitely prevalent. Also, just like the idea that you need to fix everything. Like if
mm,
you're a trans person, then like it's yours to fix. You need to be the activist. You need to be showing up on the front door, and that's true because no one else will. But it shouldn't be true because it should be everybody together.
mm. Now I'm actually kind of interested because intersectionality is such a huge part of your work. I've been wondering because I guess I've experienced it a little bit, and I feel like I've seen other people show signs of like intersectionality fatigue, where you're trying to take on all these different problems and you kind of feel overwhelmed by them because everything's connected. I don't know. Is that
Right.
something you encounter, or am I just a baby?
Yeah, I think that's a real thing. And one of the ways I've been dealing with it, so I'm super conflict avoidant, which is maybe surprising to people who read my work, but like I don't want to get into it. But one of the ways I've been trying to deal with this issue of like intersectionality, recognizing the places where I hold enormous privilege and places where I need help, is to, for me, assert a position, but not be really in the weeds and defending it around stuff that harms me. So like, assert a position on mental health and treatments and the stigma of that, and I assert a position around queerness and transness. But I'm not like, when I engage in those topics, I feel wounded. But I'm less wounded by issues around disability activism, and in Canada, Aboriginal issues and race. And so those are places where I feel like I can really engage, point people towards resources, point people towards the groups led by those people who are doing really good work. Try and do the work amongst my own peers in my community to help bring them around, to be more compassionate and active in those issues. So like for me, my approach to intersectionality is I can't do everything. Existing in the spaces where I'm non-normative is like activism enough. Like the fact that I exist is rough on enough like of society's norms.
Oh yeah.
And then I can protect myself by like keeping myself safe in those spaces, and then really putting myself out there to amplify the voices of those who are not safe in other places. And that's really worked out for me because I feel like it keeps me aware, because I need to stay in touch with and be reading the things that are happening in those groups, those activism groups, Black Lives Matter Toronto. I do a lot of stuff for disability advocacy in my work because I'm a digital designer, so we have accessibility issues around web design and software design. And so I can do really, really good work there. And I don't have to like get stabbed in the heart every time someone says something shitty.
That's interesting. Yeah, to talk about these things that don't hurt us personally as being a thing where you actually have almost more potential to help. I think we have a tendency to work on things that we're personally affected by, and maybe that is part of what causes this fatigue.
It's just how I've been doing it this year, because I can't deal with it. I can't. Like I don't end up a good activist if I like have to engage around like genderqueer stuff all the time. I just feel like the world is out to get me, and I never want to do anything ever again.
And this is, though, an interesting imbalance that comes from people who say are on the opposing side of an issue, and they come in and they have no stake in the game. They don't care. They're not the ones who are losing rights. And they'll just be like, oh, we just want to play devil's advocate, or we're going to have a debate here. And it's like, it's a fun debate for you, but this is serious. Like, like you're debating my existence. Like it's something that's up for debate.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So
it's kind of interesting, though. Well, I'll let you finish.
No, like I think that's really it. Is like that conversation is specifically around my like legitimacy as a human being, which is a hard conversation for anyone to have. So I mean, if allies had the same approach where they could be like, I'm not, saying that trans people don't exist doesn't like invalidate me as a person. So I have more resilience to be in this conversation and be like, yes, they do. Here's some information. That would help me out a lot. That would help me out if I was in a group and someone said something shitty and I didn't have to always be the one being like, well, let's pick that apart. Let's how about we talk about that?
That was actually a big thing for me when I finally reached the point where I had enough people reading my comic where if somebody said something shitty on a comic, other people would jump in and fight them. I didn't have to. It feels so nice to know other people have your back. It feels like you matter in the world,
It does.
And so allies, pay attention to that. Help out people. Don't expect us to do the fighting. Maybe like, I don't know about you, but like when I talk about race stuff, I feel very out of place because I don't want to speak for other people. I try to support non-binary people, but I don't want to speak for them because what the crap do I know? But how do you tread that line between not overstepping your bounds but being a good ally like that?
I think that's a really common feeling, and I certainly am familiar with that feeling around race. The way I've been trying to balance it is certainly being up on like recent thought pieces and stuff coming out of people that are well respected in those communities, but also just knowing the resources to direct people to. Like I can give the general good spots on so a good example, Black Lives Matter Toronto disrupted the parade this year. In Toronto, they stopped it until an agreement was reached around a number of things, including like police presence at Pride, that kind of stuff. So they depending on who you talk to, they might say they held the Pride parade hostage. Yes. The reaction from a lot of white queer folks was very negative, and it was really quite hostile towards these people. I was debating this on Twitter, and someone was even like, "This is intersectionality done wrong," and I'm like, "This is exactly what intersectionality is. What are you talking about?" So for me, when I was trying to engage in that, I felt like I had a responsibility because, I could come to fellow white people, as I guess a peer, and they might listen to me, was to have the sort of general talking points, the 101 stuff, and then to have like 5 people they should go read, or a video they should watch, or something, or an organization they should go see. So like give my position, and then just like start shooting them towards the people that are actually doing the work. That way I'm not talking over anyone. I'm just sending them to the right resources. And that's made me feel pretty okay about that balance.
Yeah, I think that like it just like the talking about people should go do their own homework, having these resources available that where somebody who does know more than you can speak on this and being able to direct people to it, that's kind of you doing your part without overstepping your bounds.
Yeah, balance. I can help people do their homework. Like it's hard to know where to start. If you Google certain things, sites that come up aren't going to be the sites we necessarily want people to read.
Yeah.
We know that. So like I think we can curate. I think as allies you can be really good information curators.
I like that term, curation. It's like an art gallery.
Yeah.
Of course, the real problem is a lot of these people just do not want to do their homework. They already know what's right, and you're wrong. And I guess there's no engaging with those people anyways. So, I mean, how would you have you ever had a time where you were able to engage with somebody who was just dead set on something and wouldn't listen, or is it fruitless to argue with people?
I don't know what. This is so hard. I think we've been talking about this a lot in the last few weeks as well. Is like engagement. Arguing doesn't always work. And we have a lot of research that says that when you engage someone on an opinion in a contrary way, it tends to entrench them. Don't really know how to have these conversations except to like find common ground and work from there. And I think again, we're talking about allies because that's not work I want to do as a trans person. That's not work I want to do as a queer person, but because I don't want to find common ground with someone who's being shitty at me. So we keep saying like these are really exhausting conversations, which is why it's important to not make the people who are already exhausted have them. I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know. Like anger is really important, and coddling racists doesn't, intrigue me at all.
Well, it's just okay. Where is the middle ground between racism and not racism? Because it sounds to me like either you're racist or you're not. Like,
and that's one of those stupid false binaries we've gotten ourselves into. The world is full of these really stupid false binaries. I cannot think of like any identity actually where I can really say like it's a switch that you flip. Not that racist is an identity. Oof.
There are people who are, though. There's people who are like, I don't want to even talk about them because they're so vile, but they're out there.
Yeah. Oh, we are like messing up this like easygoing podcast.
It's
thing,
just
by
where
the way.
it goes. This is the world we live in.
Excuse me, one second.
No probs.
Oh goodness. Yeah. Well, I think maybe a thing that we can all do is muddle the idea of any sort of binary. That you are racist or you are not. I think you can be conscious of your racism and work against it.
Mm-hmm.
I think
there
are various ways of doing that. That you are any identity or not, that you are totally healthy or totally sick is a completely false binary that's messed up people in terms of thinking about disability, because they think it's something that happens very suddenly and only to certain kinds of people. Mm-hmm. So I tend to try and, if we could just get away from black and white thinking, we'd probably be a lot better, wouldn't we?
It'd certainly take the strain off for a lot of these conversations, and people would be less emotionally upset by having them. To say that you're now racist, it's like you're now a Ku Klux Klan member. It's like, well, no, they just said something that was misinformed, and maybe they're overall a good person, and they'll, with proper education or whatever, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that was wrong, sorry. But, yeah. I try to stay...
Race is the hard, right? Because, like, that's the one where we've got a lot of white fragility wrapped up in not being seen as racist, which turns accusations of racism into a bigger deal than the racism itself, and it's just like very difficult to unpack. And I think that is my job as a white person when I engage with people around racism, is to do that unpacking for them. So yeah,
moving away from sorry, you can finish that thought if you want. I promised you lighter stuff. I was very interested though in your most recent strip where you're talking about using your science lessons, like that you'd taken in university, I guess, for your different animals and their different sort of natural phenomena. And I see the science influence though throughout so many, especially the early ones. Is science been influential on you? Like, it seems like biology is a big thing. Like,
my training's actually pretty basic. Like, it's like some basic university courses, which were difficult. Like, I'm not good at this. But like I have echoes of things like the Krebs cycle and aerobic respiration, and I remember learning all of the molecule transplants and stuff in them. My more formal scientific-ish training is in linguistics and cognitive science.
Heavy stuff again.
Information theory and stuff.
Have you had a chance to use that in your comics yet?
Actually, the information stuff, linguistics and cognitive science and information theory for me are pretty much all the same thing. They're understanding how we communicate and categorize and pull together information around our world, which is super nerdy, and I love it.
So you totally have used that in your comics then?
I do. I actually, I did my master's thesis on this, and I wrote this little primer on surveillance and categorization for queer identities. And in fact, I turned it into a little book that I sell at conventions now.
I saw that advertised in one of your strips there, yeah.
And I'm super proud of it because I think this is a place where I can do that good work. Is we are embedded in really, really complicated information systems. It's very difficult to understand, and things are happening without our consent and without our real ability to understand legislatively, technologically, and in private spaces. So here's a thing that gets you to start thinking about it.
One thing I'm very interested in is things that happen without anybody's consent. Like these things that just kind of develop out of thin air in society, say. I think we often think about an evil cabal of people plotting, misogyny, but I think so much of it is unconscious. Is that something you'd find resonating with anything you've studied, or?
I think information. I think our particular time period has allowed for an amount of information gathering that has outpaced our ability to ethically and intellectually understand the consequences of that. In my professional work, I see this with people who want to be gathering like as much information about visitors to their websites or visitors to their software as possible, without understanding that that's really actually quite a liability. It's having information about people is a risk to you as a person who has that information, as well as to them. So I think there are people that do this maliciously, and I think there are people that do this thoughtlessly and without any concern for the people they are surveilling. But generally, I also think we got into this mindset that like more information is better.
Yeah, that's something that
and
I think
there's a space where we have large surveillance networks that are being moved into the hands of people that we probably don't want to have them.
Actually, this reminds me of one of your comics. It was about hyperbole on clickbait headlines. Everything, so going back to that whole binary thing. And as somebody who's in this online world and you're producing media, how do you feel about this sort of overall climate on just internet culture, especially, I guess, surrounding social justice issues? Or do you think it's healthy?
I'm really, really, really challenged by it. I think the thing that happened with one thing that happened with feminism and activism that was really amplified in the last maybe decade is that it became sort of a brand, and a label, which is a very real simplification of the fact that activism is a complicated and nuanced thing. So the idea of saying like this is feminist really, really upsets me, because I don't think something can be feminist. I don't even really think people can be feminist. I think they can do feminist work. I think you can see things through the lens of feminism. But with certainly an influence of digital culture, we have this like real reduction and simplification of issues to, here is the outrage at the moment. This is feminist. This isn't feminist. This person did this, without really understanding its place in a larger system. I think the thing that really inspired that, there was a woman who took a picture of a lipstick. It was called like Lolita Pink or something.
Oh.
And she was like, it's a shitty color for a lipstick name. Like, that's kind of gross.
Yeah.
And then people were writing like articles about it, and she was just like, I just think it's I think it's a bad name. but now it's turned into like this giant phenomenon, and no one's actually talking about like it's a bad name because of the Lolita phenomenon and sexualization of young girls and children, and how that works with like the general raising of girls in a patriarchy, and like it's not the lipstick, right? That's what we're talking about.
This is so common though in art, even that you'll take a novel or a poem or any piece of art and people will read into it and add all these things to it that just aren't even in the author's intention in any way. And I guess people do that now on sort of like in a partisan way. This is going to support my cause. I'm going to read into this.
That's true. And I think that brings us back to that idea of like, how do we talk about these things in a medium that's necessarily reductive, right? Unless I'm writing something, unless I'm writing a book, like everything I do is a reduction of an issue. And how do I avoid that effect of it being, something that's transient and in the end not particularly relevant?
That's a hard one with comics because you only have so much space, you only have so much time to work on it, and then you do it and people say it's reductionist or it's a straw man or you didn't get this nuance to it. It's like, well, I've got like a few panels and like a day to do this in maybe, and like I can't do everything. And there's no room for nuance.
I mean, I think they exist. I think actually I've been accused of using them a few times when I've literally used like an advertisement, like quote from someone. Someone said something to me on the subway and I've used it in a comic, and they're like, you can't construct strawman like that. I'm like, no,
this is a real thing.
This is a real thing. People are genuinely this shitty.
That's just that's in my comic all the time. Most of the shitty bigot things that get said, that's real stuff that people have said. And there's even like
when we get kind of accused of exaggerating or even fabricating stuff because Like, what's it like to be so out of this world that you can't even imagine that we're honestly representing our lives.
That's just the thing about, I guess, privilege is, here we are back to heavy stuff, but we can't escape it. People who don't have to deal with it just don't see it, and they just don't even think it could possibly be real, you know?
Couldn't possibly be this bad.
Yeah.
I think they're like, oh yeah, well, like people are mean, but like
No one's
it's not
that
that.
mean.
It's pretty bad, you know. Sometimes it's pretty bad.
You this reminds me of trans visibility. I was talking last week with Sam Orchard, who is a webcomic out of New Zealand. We were talking about how trans visibility isn't really that useful for people in the absence of support, say from institutions or allies. And you're your one comic about your like business ethics and compromising your beliefs and like not calling out somebody if they're a client because you can't always afford it. Is that something that comes into your life a lot? Do you feel like you are having to compromise on, say, trans visibility for work or anything else? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't think of a person who doesn't do this unless you are turning, not turning, but unless you are using your identity as part of your literal work. I mean, we all, no matter who you are, you're screening and filtering parts of yourself, no matter what environment you're on. But like, if you hold on these identities, trans is a really good one.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're always compromising. You're compromising because you might not be safe. That's a really big one that we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
You're compromised because the consequences of being out and the benefits of that, don't quite even out. And I'm actually in a weird space with this right now because I changed jobs last year from a not hostile but pretty like conservative and normative environment to a much smaller space. And my coworkers are like, they're lovely. They're really nice people. I know they are queer allies, and I'm not gender out to them.
Mm.
And a lot of this is coming from an internal doubt, not of my identity, but of like the difficulty of asserting myself in this space, and how even people who I know are kind and supportive may be irritated or frustrated or annoyed or inconvenienced or genuine or like negative about it.
Well, people, they see you in a different way once they find out. Like, I don't tell most people that I'm trans, and once they find out, even if they're well-meaning, they see you differently now. And the question is, do you want them to?
Yeah, and then you have to do a bunch of work with them.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you can do it and then everything's, because then you're gonna have to be like, okay, now I'm gonna remind you guys every day for a while, or.
But it must be much harder with non-binary people, I imagine, just because that's newer for people for the most part. And like when you just say I'm just presenting as a woman, and then they find out I'm trans, and okay, I'm still a woman. Once we've established that, you're seeing me that old way. Can we keep that? Like that's an easy thing for people to wrap their heads around. When you're like, no, I'm non-binary, so they have to be like, well, wait, do I do anything differently? And it's like you have to walk them through almost like how not to be shitty. I don't know. Is it harder?
I don't know. I don't know if it's harder. I don't have the experience of for example, being a trans woman. I think
of course.
I think there's different risks and different considerations. I think, statistically, I think there's more danger in for trans women. They obviously tend to have a lot of risk in terms of coming out. For non-binary people, my experience, the people I know talk about the lack of legitimacy to be a real barrier. So there are physical and social risks, but also just like a general, like, people don't understand it. They don't think it's real. They think you're making shit up, and they'll treat you like you're that kind of person.
And you talked
which
about...
is, in a professional context, by the way, that is very risky.
Mm-hmm. You talked about that in the one comic about being trans with mental health issues. Now suddenly people are like, oh, so they're just crazy. That's why, like, you get, if you're having to fight for your legitimacy already, it's so hard then to have another layer that people would see as taking your legitimacy down. And yeah. I do think that while, of course, being trans in any way is not in any way mental illness, the same stigma that people have against mental illness is basically the same one they have against being trans. Like that you could just snap out of it or something, you know?
Yeah. Or I mean, I think people think that it's something has gone wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's weird because for me it tends to be more of a failure of a social space rather than an internal individual space, right? Like if we had a social community that was like, we understand that gender is variable and that people may present as differently as we may gender them, or they may shift genders in their lifetimes, and that's like a thing. That's a thing. And like being trans wouldn't. It would just be it's a social failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not individual failure at all, ever. But I think there's a real focus on the individual aspect of these identities rather than sort of environmental conditions that turn them into outliers or turn them into abnormalities.
And that's going back to that whole norms and the way they hurt people, and people aren't allowed to be how they want to be just because other people have ideas of how they should be. And it's just kind of crappy that, I don't know, your opinion of things is apparently enough to affect other people's identities and lives. And
it's visibility is very scary. I mean, visibility, when it's a choice, is complicated because then you're making choices.
Mm-hmm.
How genuinely to present yourself, how honestly, whether the people around you can be supportive or not. Visibility, when it's not a choice, is super scary because then you need to make choices about the spaces you go to and whether those are safe to like physically exist in. And it's really weird that we have this space for like just genuinely presenting as you, asserting a name, maybe a pronoun, an identity, a physical look is something that requires calculation. When I do workshops on this, I talk about how we're always calculating. Even like the most normative person in the world makes a decision on what shirt to wear every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, always calculating. It's just for some people the calculations are like, will I get thrown out of a bar? Will my boss suddenly stop being nice to me?
Mm-hmm.
Will so the stakes for those calculations are very different based on who you are, and that's because of those norms.
And just the privilege that comes with being quote unquote normal. Again, like people who don't have stake in the game can afford to debate it or take risks with things, and whereas other people who have a stake in the game can't always afford these things.
When I was really struggling with gender, when I was like really coming around to it, when my glass was low enough I could start thinking about it, I started doing this thing that I think it was pretty annoying for pretty much everyone around me, because I started like really interrogating the cisgender people's around me perception of gender. Because I'd be like, so you're a guy, right? Right. So like, how do you know? Like, is it like is it what you're wearing? Like, if you wore a dress, would that feel uncomfortable? Would you feel like less of a guy? Is it, and I was just like really, really trying to figure out how the hell they knew their gender, but also how they were communicating it, because that was very important to me suddenly. It was very important to know that like this person, if they were wearing a dress, would not feel like gender uncomfortable at all, but this person would. And like, what does that mean? Like what? And all the answers were different, which is completely unhelpful. But
which I guess
validating.
is to be expected, though, because people are. You think that in itself is answering it, because it's like, look, everybody's just kind of different. Maybe don't enforce things.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, some people talked about their like literal identities of like daughter, and how that was like kind of formative to their understanding of gender. Someone told me that if you cut her hair, she would feel like, I'm using like gender trouble, just like less of like the gender that you want to be presenting.
Yeah.
Some people were like, oh, you could dress me up in anything, you could, do anything to me, it really wouldn't do anything to me because it's all inside. Mm-hmm. So like these norms we have that seem very stable, even the people that were like in the most stable gender space I could think of had like totally different answers about what that meant for them and how it affected those choices they make every day and those calculations.
And I guess so much of it is just what our history is and what we've connected with these things in our minds. You know, emotional baggage. It's like there's all sorts of things I could never do that other girls do. It's just because that's my baggage I can't unpack right now. You know?
Yeah.
One thing I've been dying to ask you about, we'll sort of wrap up basically around here, but I gotta know, do you meow in real life? Because you had a comic where you said you meow when you don't know what to say.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's true. I do. I'll just meow. But like I'll say it. I'm not like making the meow sound. I'll just like look at somebody and be like meow.
Because I do meow. I thought I was the only one. I think it's a good response, right?
The other thing I've found I've started to do a lot more is with my cats, I often tell them they're cats. Like, I'd be like, Hippo, you're a cat, because I think it's good that they're reminded so that they know they're cats. But I start to do this with people for, like, no reason. I think my social skills have just, like, I've been a little bit more of a shut-in this year, and I think my social skills have just, like, tanked, because I don't know how to have a conversation with anyone ever.
This one's been okay.
This one's all right. I mean, you're a cat, so that's good.
Sure, right? So, before we head out and let you rest your poor cough, do you have any like upcoming projects besides folding dinosaurs out of paper, or are you working on anything special?
I'm trying to get back to a more regular posting schedule. I came out of I had a rough time in the summer, and I started doing once a week. I'd like to get back to 2 times a week. That's my main goal. I went away for a week to BC, and I made, so if you only read my webcomic, you don't know this. But if you're on my Twitter feed, you would know that I did Inktober, which is where you'd make an ink drawing every day. And I made all these like weird little monsters. And so I went away for a week and turned it into like this 2-meter mural of monsters. And right now I'm just trying to figure out how to digitize it, because it's massive, and then what I could do with it, because it's really, really beautiful, and I'm very proud of it. So
I want to see that. What's your Twitter handle so I can follow you? Is this Robot Hugs or?
Yeah, Robot Hug Comic.
Okay.
And there's a lot of pictures of cats in there. But I just accomplished this thing. When I was talking at the beginning about like I accomplished something, and now I want to do like all the crafts. I want to like do so many things. It's because like. One thing about doing, maybe you can relate, maybe one thing about doing like a regular thing is it never ends.
Yeah. There's always more to do.
Yeah, you finish one thing and you're like, okay, I'm already like 20% into the next one.
The tragedy of being an artist is that thought is inherently faster than action, so you will always have more ideas than you could ever possibly enact. Even if they're not all good ones, you always have something you could do, and you won't be able to do it.
It's very eloquent and true. But, you know, I did make a 2-meter long mural, and it only took me, like, 20 hours.
I gotta go see that. We'll post links in the description of this we'll do Twitter handle. You got where you sell your books and zines and stuff, you got an online thing I saw, right?
Yeah. I think my store's gonna shut down in the new year, because I do, like, a fall thing. So, but if you follow me on Twitter, I keep all my merchandise announcements, any convention announcements. I'm hoping to be at TCAF next year.
You were there this year, right? You were there this year, right?
I was not. They like it if you go every other year.
Oh, so oh, that's right. You know, I was reading that in the 2015 section.
So I'll hear about that in the new year. And anything I'm selling and any cool things I'm doing, you'll find there. Also, a lot of cat pictures. Just saying. If you like cats, you'll like my Twitter feed.
So if you like the internet, you'll like your Twitter feed.
That's true.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap up here. Thanks so much for coming on, Robot. And
thank you for coming. It's been super lovely.
I hope it wasn't too heavy.
No, it's not. I hope nobody was like, oh, I hope they'll talk about, like, amusement parks. Because I can't. I just talk about stuff that bothers me.
Well, I guess that's why
we make comics. It's just gonna be like this, except, you know, people at a party trying to get away from me instead of like. But thank you for having me. It's been great.
Oh, thanks so much. And thanks to everybody for listening. Like I said, this will be the last one of the year. I'll see you in 2 weeks, and I guess in the new year, 2017. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.